There was once a village that sat between a great river and a greater forest. For 10,000 seasons the forest had given the villagers deer, hare, wild boar, river fish, and birds of all kinds. And among this village there lived a young man named Aedan. From the time he was old enough to walk quietly through tall grass, every elder in the village said the same thing: "That boy has the gift." His eyes were so sharp he could read the ground and tell what had passed and where it was going. By his 17th season, Aedan could track a fox through dry stone. By his 19th, he had fed his family through a winter so cold the river cracked in half. The village loved him for it, and he loved being loved for it. And he thought to himself, "Why choose one when I'm skilled enough for all?" Then came the season of abundance. The rains had been generous, and the forest had grown thick, wild, and full of life. Word spread through the village like fire. The animals were everywhere. Deer in the eastern valley, boar near the black stones, pheasant along the ridge, fish schooling so thick in the shallows you could hear them from the bank. Every hunter in the village made a choice. Old Brennus chose the deer trail, as he always did. Young Fergus and his brother went for the river fish. The women of the northern huts set their traps for hare and fowl along a single path they had walked 100 times. But Aedan? He looked at the forest and saw something different. He didn't see one opportunity. He saw all of them: deer, boar, fish, pheasant, hare, every trail singing to him at once, and he thought to himself, "I choose one when I'm skilled enough for all." One morning, he rose before dawn, sharpened every one of his spears, packed every one of his traps, and walked into the forest like a king walking into his kingdom. He found the deer trail first. The prints were fresh, barely an hour old. He crouched and followed. He was deep in the tracking, his whole body tuned to the sound of the forest ahead, and then he heard the low grunt of boar coming from the south. A wild boar, the most valuable animal in the forest. He left the deer trail and turned south. He ran for 20 minutes before the boar prints disappeared into thick brush, too dense to follow quietly. He stood at the edge of it, breathing hard, and heard the unmistakable call of pheasant from the ridge above him. He turned uphill. He climbed for half an hour. By the time he reached the ridge, the pheasant were gone, pushed deeper into the trees by the noise of his approach. He stood on the ridge and looked down at the river below, and there he saw fish flashing in the shallows. He descended and waded in, but the fish scattered into the deep water where no spear could reach them. When the sun began to fall, he sat down on a rock in the middle of the forest, and for the first time that day he was still. The forest was quiet, and in that quiet, Aedan felt something hollow. He walked back to the village as the last light died. And when the village gathered to share their kill, Brennus with his deer, Fergus with his fish, the women with their hare, every eye turned to Aedan. He had nothing, not one thing to show for a full day in a full forest. That night, an old man named Senan came and sat beside Aedan at the edge of the fire. He was the oldest person in the village. He had outlived 2 wives, 3 kings, and more bad ideas than he could count. He said nothing for a long time. He just watched the fire. Then he said, "Tell me what you saw today." Aedan told him everything: the deer trail, the boar, the pheasant, the fish, the turning and running and climbing and wading. He said it with frustration in his voice. Old Senan listened to all of it. Then he said, "The forest didn't betray you. You abandoned the forest. 11 times. Aedan looked at him. The deer trail was real. The print was fresh. If you had stayed on it, just that one trail, you would have eaten. But you left it the moment something else called to you. And then you left that trail and then the next. You were never hunting. You were just running." Aedan sat with that for a moment. But there were so many animals. How do I choose only one? The old man smiled. He picked up a stick and drew a single line in the dirt in front of them. You choose the one trail you understand best, the one whose ground you know, whose signs you can read in the dark, whose animal you have hunted before. You choose based on what you know deepest. And then you stay. The next morning, Aedan rose before the village and walked to the eastern valley. He found the deer trail, a new set of prints laid down in the night. He crouched and followed. From the west came the sound of boar. He didn't turn. From the ridge came the call of pheasant. He didn't look up. He stayed on the trail. For 4 hours he followed it through thick trees and open grass and rocky ground and back into thick trees again. And when the deer finally paused at a stream to drink, Aedan was close enough, quiet enough, still enough. He came home that evening with enough meat to feed 3 families. In the years that followed, Aedan became the greatest hunter the village had ever known, because he had learned that abundance doesn't reward those who want the most, but those who commit the most to the one trail they know. And when old Senan finally passed in his sleep in his 93rd year, Aedan sat by the fire and told this story to the young hunters gathering around him. He always ended it the same way. The forest has always been generous. The question is never whether there is enough. The question is always, are you willing to follow one trail long enough to find out? Now, let's unpack the 5 universal lessons hidden in this story. Lesson 1, focus always beats scattered effort. Aedan was gifted. He had the right tools and was in the right forest at the right time, and yet he still came home empty. That's because talent without focus is just potential, and if we're being honest, potential doesn't feed anybody. We live in the most distracted financial era in human history. Every week there's a new stock making headlines, a new asset class promising life-changing returns, a new strategy that someone on the internet swears by. And so people do what Aedan did. They leave the trail they're on and run toward the new sound. Then they leave that trail when something louder comes along. Then the next, then the next. At the end of the year, they've been investing. They've been busy, they've been excited, they've done a lot of running, and they've nothing to show for it. Not because the market failed them, they failed themselves. Focused effort compounds. Scattered effort cancels itself out. The most dangerous thing about distractions is that they feel like opportunity. One skill, one strategy, one account mastered deeply will always outperform 10 strategies understood shallowly. Lesson 2. Too many investments become chaos, not a portfolio. There's a version of Aedan's story that plays out in portfolios all over the world every single day. Someone opens a brokerage account with $10,000. They buy a tech stock because it's trending, then they buy a crypto coin their cousin mentioned, then they hear about an ETF, then gold. Then a new IPO catches their eye. 6 months later, they have 23 positions, none of them meaningful, most of them down, and they genuinely can't tell you why they own half of what they own. That's not diversification. That's the illusion of diversification. Real diversification is deliberate. It's structured and owned with understanding. The research is unambiguous. Beyond a certain point, more holdings don't reduce your risk. They just reduce your returns. You end up diluting your winners with your losers until the whole thing goes sideways together. Own fewer things. Know them deeply. Watch them closely. That's a portfolio. Everything else is just noise with a ticker symbol. Lesson 3. A simple plan executed well beats a complex plan abandoned. The financial industry has a strange love affair with complexity. Products get designed with 17 moving parts, fees buried in footnotes, strategies that require you to monitor 6 variables simultaneously. And people buy these products because complexity feels like sophistication or something worthy of money. But complexity is usually where execution goes to die. The simpler your strategy, the easier it is to stick to. The easier it is to stick to, the more likely it is to actually work. For example, an automatic savings debit order on payday. A single index fund held for 20 years. Have one rule: never sell in a panic when markets fall. These are boring strategies, but they're also the ones that quietly, unspectacularly turn ordinary people into wealthy ones. The best financial plan isn't the most sophisticated one. It's the one you will actually follow every month, without exception, for 20 years. Lesson 4. Don't chase trends. The boar in this story wasn't just meat. It represented the possibility of more, or a bigger prize just over there. just out of reach, worth abandoning the certain thing for the spectacular thing. In money, trends are the boar grunt. Crypto in 2021, NFTs in early 2022, meme stocks, AI stocks at their peak. Every single one of these arrived with the same energy, loud, sudden, irresistible, and full of other people getting rich just ahead of you. And millions of people left solid, steady positions to chase the sound. And most of them, not all, but most, found themselves standing on the edge with nothing to show for it. This doesn't mean new things are always wrong. Some boar trails are real, and they lead to a real kill. But the hunter who abandons a fresh deer trail for a distant boar grunt isn't a disciplined hunter, he is a gambler. And the market, over a long enough timeline, separates the hunters from the gamblers with brutal efficiency. By the time a trend is loud enough for you to hear about it, that even your idiot neighbor is talking about it, the informed money has already positioned. You aren't getting in early, you're becoming the exit. When something is loud enough to feel urgent, that urgency is the red flag, not the green light. Lesson 5. Stick to your strategy through the noise. On that second morning, when Aedan heard the boar, he felt the pull. Maybe this time it's different. Maybe the boar trail is the right one. Maybe I should just check. He felt all of that. And he stayed anyway. That staying, that small, quiet act of not turning is the most important financial skill that nobody teaches. Not analysis, not stock picking, not timing the market. The ability to stay when every instinct is telling you to run somewhere else. Markets are noise-making machines. They go up in ways that feel like they will never come down. They go down in ways that feel like they will never recover. Both feelings are lies and will cost you a fortune if you act on them. The investors who built generational wealth weren't necessarily smarter. They were steadier. They made a decision in a calm moment. They wrote it down, and then, when the noise came, they went back to what they wrote in the calm moment, and they trusted it more than they trusted their fear. Your strategy, if it's sound, doesn't need to change when the market is frightening. It needs you to change, to become the person who can sit at the edge of the fire and not be moved by the sounds coming from the forest. The market will always be full of animals. Your job is not to catch them all. Your job is to finish the one trail you started. And so the lesson is simple. Not every sound in the forest deserves your attention. Sometimes the difference between failure and success is just staying on the trail a little longer. The forest will always offer more than one path. The real question is whether you can stay faithful to the one you chose. In money, as in the forest, chasing everything usually leaves you with nothing. The people who win are often the ones who pick a strategy and stick with it. If you got value from this story, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more tales from the money tree.